Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Kevin Thomas, your neighborhood therapist specializing in trauma and relationships. I'm dedicated to supporting individuals in their mental health journeys through therapy, workshops, seminars, training, and keynote speaking engagements. With my expertise in trauma-focused therapy, I provide a safe, compassionate space for healing, helping individuals overcome the impact of traumatic experiences and foster resilience. I also focus on relationships, offering guidance and tools to cultivate healthy connections, improve communication, and enhance emotional well-being. Through workshops, seminars, and training programs, I empower individuals with practical skills and knowledge to navigate their mental health challenges and also build fulfilling relationships. If you're seeking support, interested in attending one of my events, or looking for an engaging speaker for your next gathering, let's connect and create positive change together. Join me on this transformative journey towards healing, stronger relationships, and holistic well-being.
Hey, test, 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 test. Give me some volume. Test, test. 1, 2. Test 1, 2. There we go. There we go. Okay, we're gonna go. We're gonna as soon as they come in, we'll get started. I'm just gonna kind of just talk a little bit, introduce everything, and welcome and all that. Yeah. Hmm. So what? No, it's so much other stuff going on, so don't just sit over there for now. Y'all get the act. This is like y'all in theater, and when nobody's around, y'all just act. Y'all like really, oh, that's right. You can't come in agreeing to disagreeing already, Mike.
Agree to disagree. Let's vote. Let's vote.
Ms. Bo? Yep, just for now. And we're gonna get started. Uh, when so when we have volunteers, y'all just gonna come up and you say, yeah, I don't mind. I'm just did Brandon they didn't walk out the door, did they? I think they was checking the place out.
I'll let Max choose our decisions.
Oh, that's what you're gonna do? Okay. I did too. But it's just so much like. Oh, look, y'all, we're not gonna do this. Not here. Not here. Not here. Not here. We're not. Not here. Yeah, he's like, yeah. Look at him. He like them lights, man. He like them lights. Ooh. I'm just waiting on 2 more people. I don't even know where they went. Y'all know where they went? Did y'all see what Brandon went? Did y'all see what Brandon went? Harley? Oh, okay. They're probably trying to get something set up. Hey, Dallas, can you ask Brandon to come on? Huh? Okay. You're a speechwriter?
Huh?
You say you're a speechwriter?
Am I a speechwriter? Listen,
Or you just getting into it?
I love freestyling, but I am a speechwriter.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a
So
freestyler.
my thing is like, if I know the person, I speak from the heart. But like, obviously they need stuff on black and white too. So our graduation for the trainees is Thursday at Clip Breakers. Did they tell you that? So let me know if you want tickets.
Okay. What's the date again?
Thursday, this Thursday coming up at 5:30.
Oh, I'll be out. I'm taking him back to
Oh
school.
yeah.
Gotta take him back to school.
I know you had mentioned.
Yeah. This week is going to be rough going to play.
So the kids graduate during that
Huh?
time.
I can hear you. He said,
Do you have
yeah. Yeah. I got one more panelist. Oh.
graduation? So I'm giving the Courage to Grow speech.
Oh.
Courage to Grow. So I'll be passing out 2 awards. I'm
Mhm.
giving to 2 students because
Okay.
2 trainees because they exceptional growth.
Gotcha. How
How many we got? 18. So 18 no. So 18 out of 26. So exceptional like that. No, 8. They can try it again. We always coming into the next school year. It's gonna be rough. But I say so. I actually got my did I tell you I got my my certificate and trauma focused cognitive behavior therapy.
Really?
Yes.
So where did you do the training at?
Online. I
Fancy?
did it online. So no, it's like I got it on my phone. I can't remember that. It's like
You did do your job.
so yeah, my part time job they paid for me to do it. So they paid for me to get all my mental health certificates. Plus, they asked me that too because I gotta see what's wrong with somebody.
Oh my God. It's okay. Y'all are not gonna do this to me. Y'all are not gonna do this to me.
Listen, it's still love. We gonna get it together.
Yeah.
But no, I cognitive behavior therapy, and then I'm gonna get my DNT,
Mhm.
DNT,
Mhm.
something like that. So that's my next certificate I'm working on. That mental health field, it's like so with Job Corps. I mean, not with Job Corps, with
Did you
CCS.
see Tina? Did you see Brandon? Okay. Okay, cool. We'll go ahead and get started then.
All right, again.
So Mike is gonna take, and you just gonna hold Max. Hey, we're gonna go ahead and get started. No, just have a seat right there. So I'm just gonna call you guys up. You ready? Thank you guys for coming out to our neighborhood roundtable. We're going to talk about stuff that's happening in our community when it comes to mental health. I am your host, Kevin Thomas. Thank you guys for coming out. I appreciate it. I just want you to know a couple disclaimers that we are going to be filmed. So I asked, everybody's already agreed to that. So that's going to be on the panel. Also, that this is a safe space. If anyone feels vulnerable, feel like they are triggered, we ask that you would please do not leave. And if you need someone to come and assist you at that time, we will assist you. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this roundtable. I wanted to do something different this year when it comes to talking, having a roundtable and talking about the things that are impacting our community. I wanted to do this this activity. As you can see, we have agree, disagree, strongly agree, and strongly disagree. And with this, we're going to do an activity with my volunteers when it comes to mental health and when it comes to the community. And then once we are finished with that, then we'll start our roundtable discussion. So at this time, I'm going to have all of my volunteers that already volunteered to come up, please. So the way this activity works, my other volunteer is sitting still, but we need her to come on up too. Mm-hmm. So the rules of this activity is there's no right or wrong answer. The responses are agree, disagree, or strongly disagree, strongly agree. You can stand over there. And so what we're going to do is when I ask a question, all I'm going to ask you guys to do is walk to where you agree, disagree, or you don't have to stick together. You just answer it how you would answer. And then when you get to that microphone, you would just kind of give a little elaboration of the question, why you chose what you chose. Okay? Again, there's no right or wrong answers. We want to respect everyone, make sure everyone is listening and engaging, making sure that we're not being judgmental or critical when we go to our stations. And so at this time, my first question to you guys is, and you will also have 10 seconds to make your decision. So the countdown will start at 10 seconds. And once we get to 1, hopefully, and everybody be at their stations, and then we'll start from there, okay? So the first question, mental health was discussed in my home. You got 10 seconds to go to. You guys come on in. So I just got a couple more volunteers that just walked into place. So we just want, I'm gonna ask this question to the one. Was mental health ever discussed in your home? You got 10 seconds to go to what you think. Okay. So can you elaborate on why you chose strongly disagree? Still not on?
No, they're not on. Oh, is mine on?
I got you. I think based off your question, mental health was not discussed in my home based off the sense of like environment. So based off the environment in a society that we were raised in the city of Chicago, that you had to be tough, especially being a man in a home. I didn't have a father growing up, and so that took the presence of like I having to be there. I'm having to be that man in a home, and so at the end of the day, you had to be that person, and so yet you had to figure out what everybody else was going through, but yet nobody cared what you was going through.
Wow. Thank you. Anybody else? One more over here before I go to she has disagree. Was mental health ever discussed in your home?
I would have to say it was not, but I also would have to say simply because, okay, I'm sorry. Simply because at that time, it was something that was not, it didn't even come up back then. Back then when I was being raised, that wasn't a thing then.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't discussed at all then.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You just said disagree.
I have to say disagree because it was not introduced to me in the positive way.
Mm-hmm.
I could say it was introduced in the negative way. So I knew what it was because I was able to identify somebody in my home having mental health issues. But it was never, there was never a solution or any further conversation like, this is how you deal with it. You just saw the bad of it, and it was just, that's what it was.
Thank you. So make sure you guys are speaking into the microphone. Next question. If you look at me, you wouldn't know that I have mental health challenges. You have 10 seconds to answer your question. If you look at me, you wouldn't know that I have mental health challenges. All right, all right. Now this is kind of, we got a different look here. So I'm going to start with you guys. You disagree again. Why?
I mean, I don't really try to hide it. I don't try to hide it. I try to feel it. So I can't say that if you look at me, you wouldn't know that day that I'm having a mental breakdown or something. Because I don't try to hide it, but I don't try to be sloppy with it, I guess.
Sloppy?
I just try to push forward and acknowledge, like self-aware that I'm having a moment and it may project. So I have to be cautious of that. So I don't know.
Okay. One of you guys?
For myself, it would be, I guess, perception is like reality.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see the minister, the own business owner, the community outreach individual, the director, you kind of just see someone that's like, oh, this person is all together based upon their titles and the perception. So you really don't, you just by appearance and perception, you would just say, oh, he got it going on. He got it all together.
You would like to speak? Strongly disagree.
Strongly disagree. What he said, being in leadership, especially when people come to you all the time,
Mm-hmm.
I am a salon owner,
Mhm.
operator, and a lot of people sit in my chair and let things out, and they sometimes they just assume that you're okay all the time, but sometimes you feeling worse than the person sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
Agrees.
Can you ask the question one more time?
If you look at me, you wouldn't know that I have mental health challenges.
I would say, based off my nature of position within my career field, that people often underestimate what I may have going on and what I may deal with based off the sense of um, personal and professional life, that they often question that I got it all together. But in the same way that I'm still trying to figure it out.
Thank you.
My response to that is I agree, but there's a slash agree and disagree. Because at the same time, I do believe that people can't always look at us
Mhm.
and see that. But then on the other side of that, a person can sometimes tell when you're going through things. So it's not always hide. You can't always hide that because sometimes you're going to meet someone that can challenge you and look at you and sense that there's something else going on with you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. So my next question. Mental health and trauma interferes with how we interact with others. You have 10 seconds. Mental health and trauma interferes with how we interact with others. All right. The question was mental health and trauma interferes how we interact with others. Go.
All right, I got you. I'm always going first. All right. I think it interacts based off the fact that what we may be personally going through and what we may, so we go through or move through a realm where we feel like the nature is we have to be okay. And so people don't understand that it's okay to not be okay. And so when it comes to the mental health component of it, that we struggle with that based off finding a balance. And so finding that balance equips to it's okay to not be okay, but it's also like okay to not be okay based off a sense of, you might be going through something, but like you can let it out. And so we've been equipped in the realm of like, you have to understand that you have to do this a certain type of way. But like what people understand, and once you understand the realm of mental health, you can accept the fact of not being okay.
Thank you. Go ahead. Strongly disagree. I mean, agree.
Yeah. It's like,
I guess one of the biggest impacts for myself and just looking at like society will be coming out of COVID-19 to see how it was a physical, attack on the human body, but the mental trauma and emotional trauma that has caused generations of people who no longer even know how to interact with one another because we were all locked up in our houses for a year. So it's kind of like the mental aspect of, not knowing how to interact with people, and even like in dating and relationships, how we take past experiences and past traumas from one relationship into the next. Gotcha. So it kind of like we all like are, the sum of our parts, which is our life experiences.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question. Trauma is an underlying issue that causes unhealthy relationship. You have 10 seconds to go to your stations. right, all right. Let's go to disagree this time. Let's go to disagree first. Why do you disagree? Trauma is an underlying issue that causes unhealthy relationships.
If you allow it. And the reason why I'm saying if you allow it is because I'm just thinking of my childhood.
Mhm.
Like for me, I had a lot of trauma coming from my father. And I made a very conscious decision early not to be like that as a man. So it's kind of it kind of works both ways. It can if you allow it, but if you kind of look at that and see that earlier, I don't want to be a father that don't take care of his kids. I don't want to be a father that leaves the kids sitting out a window waiting for him to come, or I don't want to be a father in jail. And very early, like even in my teenage years, I kind of knew, and I kind of was able to understand what that did to me as a young kid. And even as a young kid, I knew when I became a man and had children, what I knew I did not I want to put on my children.
Gotcha. Thank you. Strongly agree.
I strongly agree because, first of all, when a lot of times we've been growing up in these generations,
Speaking to the mic.
things are ignored
Mhm.
or swept under the rug, and then you think you passed it, and then you meet somebody, and eventually, when the hard times come, it comes up.
Gotcha.
Just like your theme is what happens in this house stays in this house, or does it? It doesn't stay in the house.
Right.
Eventually, something's going to trigger you, and it's going to come out if you don't deal with it.
Agree.
Talk to him. I can. Oh, you want to speak? Yeah, listen, I didn't know if it's your house. I can definitely. I think I should have been with strongly agree. So I feel like. Wait, nature of the question. Say the question.
Nature of the question was trauma is an underlying issue that causes unhealthy relationships.
I feel like what's unsaid is unspoken, and so with that, it creates a lot of trauma. It creates a lot of like past tense based off that aspect that we hold a lot in until we explode. And so with that nature, you have to state what's on your mind. And so you have to be open-minded, but you also have to, in a way, consider the other person. You have to consider the other person's thoughts, mindsets, reactions. And so it does hurt based off the nature of you trying to explain how you feel, but you also have to incorporate the other person's feelings. And so I do feel like it is a trauma because you have to tell that person how you truly feel.
Thank you.
Kevin, can you say the question again? I guess.
Okay. The question was trauma is an underlying issue that causes unhealthy relationships.
I would have to say ours is strongly disagree, right? Because sometimes what we don't know, we don't fix. So I'll say that because we don't always know we have trauma. And sometimes when we get into relationships and community with people, sometimes they see you outside of you so they can show you, and that can create a thing with people strongly having issues because they don't know that they have those issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Mental health and mental illness is a big issue in our community, and it brings judgment. You have 10 seconds to find your answer. Mental health and illness is a big issue in our community. All right. The question was mental health and mental illness is a big issue in our community, and it brings judgment. We have one Lone Ranger would agree, so make sure you speak into the mic so they can hear you.
I got you. As far as mental health, I feel like it does bring a sense of judgment. People are judged based off the sense of mental health. I feel like, for example, if you were in school and you were to say like, "Hey, I have an IEP," people do judge you based off that. Be like, "Oh, you slow, this, that, and the third." but yet they don't understand what you're truly going through, and they don't understand the natures of like, hey, I didn't choose this lifestyle. I didn't choose this, but yet it was what I was born with. But at the same time, for people who truly understand it, they'd be like, hey, how can I help? How can I provide services? How can I support you? And so I do feel like in a realm that yet it is known, because of course kids are I would use the realm uneducated. They do speak on it based off the fact that they just don't simply understand. And so with them not understanding that the fact of what you may be going through, that if you simply understand or get an understandings, that it can create a simply easier path.
Thank you. Thank you. One of you guys.
So I was going to just agree, but I didn't.
Okay.
I strongly agree because, yes, now we are acknowledging the mental health, and yes, it does bring judgment, but there is a very small portion of people who care about the mental health. So it is still a big thing in our community, and absolutely it brings judgment.
Can one of you guys elaborate on that a little bit more?
I was kind of gonna to tie them together. Ignorance brings judgment.
Oh, talk to them.
And so in any facet of life, when you don't know something and you have not, like you said, use the word uneducated,
Yes.
Ignorance breeds judgment because you have no clue. And even when you see growing up a person that's having a mental health episode, you automatically go into demonstrative words like that person crazy, that person stupid, that person you from the beginning you have no clue what that person is going through, and then all of a sudden then instinctively, because we're ignorant to mental health, we put negative labels on this person and make them feel even worse than what they're even at emotionally, mentally, and they're just having an emotional episode. So because of our ignorance, then we destroy a person that's just having a mental health episode.
Thank you. Thank you. My last and final question is, if I suffered with the mental illness, I would come forth and talk about it. You have 10 seconds. All right. The question was, if I had a mental illness, I would come forth and talk about it. I want to go here first because it took you the longest. Can you please go to the mic? Why did you choose disagree?
So as I say that, I'm speaking for, I do disagree. I agree, but I disagree because there are so many people that don't feel comfortable coming to someone talking about mental health. Not always because people are not aware. It's because they don't feel like there's a safe space to talk about it. Because even though our community is now more open to mental health, we are still closed-minded on it too. So if it's not discussed in the home and it's not discussed in with your group, whoever you hang with, then it's a thing that we sometimes shy away from.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead. Strongly agree.
I strongly agree now.
Okay. I like that now, right?
Now.
Okay.
Just because of some of the things that I didn't experience with mental health, I learned that it's not good for your body. When it starts causing stomach aches, headaches, you have to let it out. And my thing is, it's 911. Like, don't wait until you got to go to the hospital 4 times in 1 week thinking you having a heart attack when it's anxiety, or you so far in the bed that it's depression. Like, start way ahead of time. Get prepared way ahead of time. Even when you think that something is you're fine, go and make sure you're fine. Because I'm pretty sure once they start digging, you're going to find something that you haven't dealt with.
All right. Oh, she wants to go again. Go ahead.
Okay. And just to add something, I do agree with what Tina said, but I wanted to stand in the gap for people that might, like, just to give an explanation of why people would disagree with that, because I strongly believe in what she's saying as well. So it's one of those things where I felt like because I have experienced people that would disagree in this area, and it's because they feel like they don't have a safe place, but there are safe places, but they don't feel that. So that's why I chose to stand in the gap for disagree.
Okay. Agree.
So I agree with what both of them said. Because before I would be here. Now I'm still in that certain things I wouldn't say, and it has to get me to that point. But I learned that it's healthier to say. I'm just not all the way there yet. But now, yes.
Thank you. Oh, I'm gonna give you a mic.
That's cool. All right, what's the question again? Say it one more time. One more time. It's like everybody win. If I had a mental illness, I think I would want to talk about it, but based off society and how I was raised, I wouldn't talk about it. I wouldn't speak of it. So based off my environment and my society, that it was a nature of, hey, you have to be tough, you have to be strong, you have to be that person. And so at the end of the day, it was like a sense of weakness. And so you really didn't speak on it based off the fact that, hey, I didn't want to be considered to be weak. I didn't want to consider to be like just a weak-minded person. But being uneducated, it taught you, going to be educated, it taught you the realm that it is okay to speak about your feelings, speak about your thoughts, speak about your reactions, that you had to create that realm to be like, hey, I want to talk about this before I explode. And so they did speak on it, that, hey, like, it is that nature of just understanding how you truly feel and understanding where you truly come from based off the traumas that you have experienced.
No, you're good, bro. I mean, you kind of much just said it all, but I'll say I strongly disagree from the standpoint of, as a black man, you can never appear to be weak. As a black man, you never get that ability to show any sign of weakness without being, like the last question you said, judged. Because the moment as a black man you show a sign of weakness or you show a chink in the armor, we've been taught that, the attack is coming, the threat is coming, and when you show weakness, you're vulnerable, and then that makes you less than a man. And even with the education, even with the knowledge, even with understanding the importance of mental health, the cultural mindset that has been instilled in us since birth still at times overtakes the knowledge that we've known, because unfortunately we've been built with a toxic foundation. So then that's kind of why you still still strongly disagree, because it's then uprooting which has been given to us since birth.
Thank you guys for participating in the activity. Give yourselves a hand. So I'm just going to ask that you guys find your seat, and we're going to just start our round table discussion. So as you guys sit and think about the conversation that we just had, there are going to be some questions that I'm going to ask and some things that I want to kind of touch on a little bit. I want to know about, what do you guys think about the conversation, the activity we had? What's your opinions on any of the questions, any of the things that we talked about that you wanted to chime in on, so we can just really start our session? Anybody? just come up to the mic and just state what you want to say, ask the question, or even just respond to what we were saying. Any other questions? To any other questions, if you had any comments of the activity.
So I think the biggest thing for me is like understanding how your trauma affects relationships.
Can you speak into the mic?
Like how your trauma affects relationships, especially with, I think for me, it's looking at having a child now and looking at how my own trauma plays into that. But because of the being involved in the community, being a professional, it kind of makes it's like one part of you is consistent with addressing it, but because of everything that you're doing, either you don't have the time, or it can kind of be looked at, as I'm an advocate and I'm out here trying to help, but I'm still dealing with my own issues. And I think, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but sometimes being a Black woman, it's hard to address dealing with those things yourself and having the capacity and being able to know how your trauma is affecting the relationships around you. Because it's always, I got to get it done. I have something to do. I have to get it handled. It's always something. So even being able to be realistic with yourself, to be like, hey, this is trauma, being able to acknowledge the trauma. And then once you acknowledge the trauma, what do you do with it? How do you become consistent with treating it or handling it if you don't always have the time?
I think that is a huge misconception of mental health support in our communities, resource, because what happens is that we tend to think, because we struggle with mental health challenges and also mental illness. Mental health challenges is more of a stressful event, and the illness is actually the disorder. So I think what happens is sometimes we feel that if we're in that realm, it's difficult for us to help someone else. When in fact, helping other people, it actually helps you with your mental health. But I also, on the front of the Black male and the Black female, what comes with that is two different things. Like kind of what the other participant said earlier about the Black man always having to be strong, always have to present himself as strong. Then you have the Black woman that's always having to take care of things, keep things together, things not falling apart. So both of those things bring a huge undertaking when it comes to your mental health and the stress level. But we have to find a balance. We have to create a balance for ourselves, what works and what doesn't work. But that starts with us acknowledging and having self-awareness that we are struggling in those areas. And then it's pretty much like a checklist, making sure that you're not doing certain things that's going to make it even worse. And so it's always an ongoing, it's a fluent work that you must always be doing. You can't set it down and say, I'll pick it up later, but it's always a work. But also adding self-care in there. It has to be part of your routine. You can't just do all the things that you think you should do without adding self-care, because you comes first. Because if you are not first, nothing else matters. And so self-care is a huge thing that you have to add to that. And then once you find that self-awareness, especially when it comes to trauma, is that knowing where it comes from, knowing how you deal with it, and then also if you're able to talk back with the individual or whatever situation that happened, talk through that, process through that, it would also help you to find some type of reasoning behind why you feel the way you feel, because the triggers will happen throughout life. And when they happen, you need to know how to deal with those. And which leads to what I always say, it's not about fixing, it's about managing, because at any given time, you can be re-triggered because life is life. Life is hard. Life is challenging. And when you're triggered again and you thought you fixed it, you can even go into a deeper depression, or, it gets worse. So it's all about learning how to manage it and finding the coping mechanism to help you through that. So any other statements pertaining to that? I would like to say this too, like relationships. When it comes to relationships, it's always a give and take, you know. And I'm gonna be honest with you, there's no such thing as 50-50 in the marriage or any type of relationship. And I wish that it had never started this thing called 50-50, because there's not a time where you're going to be 100% 50. There's not times. I may be 20 one day. I need my wife to be 80. She may be 50 one day or 40 one day, and I need to be 60. So it's never a 50-50, because again, if we can get into our heads that life is life and things happen that are out of our control, we will understand that there's no such thing as 50-50, because there cannot be. Anybody got any questions or a statement on that? Anybody?
I want to comment on what she said
Okay.
about with the baby and stuff like that. I think that I'm in that transition now that she was talking about, where I was once told you don't have to go to everything. You don't have to be in attendance at everything. If you can't go, it's okay. And so I just had to tell myself that, because I couldn't go I could, but I didn't want to. Especially with me having a little boy, it was just, I didn't want to. I wanted to give my time to something else that I thought would be meaningful for me. And I feel like when we have that mentality, like, oh my gosh, we got to be everywhere, sometimes it comes off like, are you seeking validation? Like, do you want that? Like, so I don't want to hold myself hostage to somebody else giving me validation, but I don't want to hold myself hostage to, oh, I feel bad because I didn't go, or I didn't do this, or I got to keep up. I manage my time how I can manage my time and do what is best within my schedule and what's best for my family and what's best at that time, because mentally it keeps me sane. So I have to stay mentally grounded to care for my child. But at the same time, I still have to be an adult and remain on top of my business. So I think it's just kind of like a transition of what is really important to you in your life right now, in the now, versus trying to remember everything, just living in the now.
So anybody else want to speak on that before I speak? So I'm gonna answer that, and I'm gonna address that from this perspective, is that to some degree you have to be selfish. You have to be selfish in a way that no one else matters but you. Because if you get caught up in what everyone else thinks, where everybody wants you to be, then you will find yourself running from place to place. And it does become validation and looking for whatever it is. My train of thought is everything has to be relevant in the direction that you're going. You should not be involving yourself in things that are not relevant in your direction, because it works counterintuitive to what you're trying to do. So if it doesn't apply to the direction that you're going, then guess what? Is it really a priority for you? And if it's not a priority for you, then maybe you need to not go to that event or be a part of that. So that's the one thing that if I wish to look at it from that lens, that's kind of how I see it. And really, that's kind of how I practice, actually. If it doesn't benefit myself or my family, then guess what? It's not a priority. So if it's not a priority, I have a choice whether I want to attend or be a part of that or not. And that choice has to be dictated based on how I feel about it and how it's going to help me mentally. So even if I say, okay, this is something that I truly think I should do, but how is it going to affect me mentally, emotionally, physically, cognitively, however it's going to affect me, I have to consider that. And that's one thing too, when as couples and when you're in marriages, is that you have to consider the benefits of the whole, not just the individual. So it's a such thing as the individual makes the collective better, not the collective that makes the individual better. Because if you can be healthy, then guess what? That helps a healthy relationship. That means that we need two whole people, not two pieces of people. So if you guys can be healthy as an individual, it's going to be healthy as a couple or as a married couple. Okay. Anybody else want to any statement? Oh,
So what you're saying is the individual has to be healthy versus you guys are better together.
how do you be better together if one is broken and the other one is whole? How do you be better together? Because guess what? There's no such thing as a good apple if it has a big mold spot on it, right? So is the whole apple healthy? Absolutely not. Because at some point, the bad part will contaminate the good part. And see, you want to make sure that there's no contamination there. Now, I'm not saying perfect. Now, that's one thing I'm not saying. I'm not saying perfect because we'll never be perfect. But if we're not careful, the negative and the bad part of us will contaminate the good part of someone else. And so that's why it's important that we dig more into our own past and our own issues. And it may not even be something of a mental illness, but it just may be some mental health issues, which is stressors and things of that nature. And so we want to make sure that we're careful. Self-awareness, that's where it starts. Being able to be aware in yourself, even to the point where you were talking about earlier about feeling it in your body. You know, a lot of these stressors will play out in your how it affects your body. So you want to make sure you're being cognizant of the sensation that you feel in your body. Really, trauma is held like that. And so we want to make sure that we understand that if we're not aware of ourselves, we have the potentials to hurt other people. And then the bigger thing is projecting. We feel a way, but we make it seem like it's our partner. So those are the things that we want to be careful for.
And what's the difference between being selfish and self-care?
Well, here's the thing. Selfish is that nothing good comes to it. It's more about you. You don't care who you hurt. You don't care who's in the way. You don't care what happens. You don't care about the outcome. You don't care about the consequences. You just do it impulsively. You just act, and you don't think about the consequences of it. Self-care is really just taking care of yourself. Mentally, physically, the holistic person is being able to take care of yourself as an individual. Every one of us has a responsibility of taking care of ourselves before we try to take care of someone else. Okay? And so it also goes back to what I said earlier, too, is that just because you're not fully healthy, that doesn't mean you don't support someone else either. But you always must be working on it. It's always a work. It's when we get content that the problem comes up.
So I find it sometimes hard for myself to take care of myself. As far as knowing when there's something going on, I do know that. But I have a hard time really trying to figure out sometimes what to do for me, because sometimes it's easier to do something for, take care of somebody else and love somebody else than it is to love myself at times. And that is a challenge that I'm dealing with today, that kind of thing.
So I will say to that, let's think of the analogy of practice makes perfect. The more you have self-care for you, the better you are to support someone else. So if you can have better self-care for yourself, think about what you can actually give to the people around you that need the support. You can't give someone something that you don't have. If you're not happy, how can you really provide happiness for someone else? So you want to have more of practicing being better with yourself than being able to give someone else something that you don't have. So it's very important that you always start with you first. You have to always start with you before you can actually start with someone else. So think of it that way, is that practice makes perfect, And the more you do for yourself and the more you show self-care, the better you are to help someone else. Okay? Hopefully that helps. Anybody have anything else on that, or just want to just... So let's talk about why is it so hard and difficult for us as a community to come together when we're talking about mental health and when we're trying to develop these healthy relationships within our community? Why is mental health so tough?
I think people are just afraid to speak on it. People don't want to be showed as a sign of weak. People don't want to just necessarily be in agreement to be like, hey, I'm that person that does have a mental health disability. And so with that being said, people just don't speak on it as often, no matter. And so they choose to go through the personal struggles of going through it by themselves because they don't want people to know.
Why is it hard for us to in what you were saying, why is it hard to take that ownership of needing help when we can go to the doctor? We can, if we're hurting, we're feeling pain. But what happens when we have a mental breakage? What happens when we get to the capacity that mentally we're just broken?
I think based off the nature, we just never been informed of how to do so. We've always been taught to, hey, stick it out. Hey, this is what you're going through, so this is what it is. But we never been taught to go to the right resources, of what those resources consist of a sense of help. We don't know how to ask for help. And so that's what we struggle with, because at the end of the day, asking for help is a sense of, within the environment, creating a sense of weakness.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about weakness. Why as a culture do we deem someone weak when they talk about something that they have a challenge with? Why is it so difficult for us to just be accepting as a culture that we are not perfect, that we do have things that happen to us, that has happened to us from childhood, some has happened to us as adults? Why is it a bad thing as a culture for us to even have that conversation of something's wrong with that person, or that person is broken, that person is no good, that person is an alien, because he didn't choose or she didn't choose to be molested as a child, but they were. Like, why are they wrong? Why are they looked at as an outlier for our community and for our culture? Why is that an issue?
I think, yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, my bad. I ain't know. No, it wasn't loud. I think based off the fact that nobody simply said like, hey, it's okay. It's a sense of reassurance that stating all those things that you said, based off a sense of mental health and weakness, that it is okay to not be okay. But everybody looked at that as like, hey, it's a disability, so hey, you got something wrong with you. You have this going on, you got that going on, that in your mind internally created a sense of like, I got this, or I am this, so I am not the average human. And so people looked at that as a sense of like weakness, based off the fact that nobody ever told you, hey, if I got a learning disability, it's okay, because I'm still get a degree. It just may take me longer or take me other avenues, but I am okay to get this degree.
Yeah.
So nobody ever told you like, hey, I'll still get it, but it just may take me a sense of timing or a sense of what I may need extra. But yet they were so persistent on the judgment of, oh, you have this. And so they ran into the aspect of like, when you have something or have a disability or have something that you couldn't really explain truly based off the sense of you not being educated of what you may have, that people were like, hey, you have this disability. And so they labeled it as that instead of simply just asking, how can I help or how can I support?
Thank you. Anybody else?
I think we have a what's it called?
Sensitization.
Yeah. Like when it comes to our culture, it's not even just our culture, like the country's culture and the world. There's this huge bystander effect. Like you'll see something happen, you'll see something's going on with someone.
Mhm.
And rather than being empathetic or being not even sympathetic, being empathetic to, hey, I'm a human just like you.
Mhm.
What do you need?
Mhm.
People will sit there and watch rather than being like, no, like sometimes it's okay. Not even just sometimes, like it's okay if you're going through something. So then we come into this culture of through generations, it's the simple thing of if a little boy falls, get up, don't cry.
Mhm.
If a little girl is going through something, you don't get to express your emotions, or you're belittled on how you dress or what you do, rather than taking the ignorance as an opportunity to teach a lesson.
Right.
You get belittled because of what you don't know. So then you don't even seek options. You don't even know where to go or who to go, because you're like, you tap into, I guess this is the trauma that you tap into of, because of, my situation with my grandma or my mom or my aunt or my family. I don't interact with people, or I don't ask for help, because when I asked for help before, I was clowned. I was talked about. It even goes back to looking at children in schools. They're coming out of all of these different environments, being put in one. And if you fall down at school, or if something happens, now you have the whole class laughing at you and, in a sense, clowning you. So that conditions you to put you in a space where I'm not going to ask for help. I'm not going to tell what's going on with me. I'm not going to talk to anybody, because you don't know what's going to happen. And then it puts you in a mode of survival rather than trying to figure out how to advocate for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in? Anybody? So, with all of that, is there anything that we can do to help people to feel more comfortable moving forward? I know we heard about creating safe spaces earlier. What other things can we do to try to minimize the effect of that? I'm choosing my words because I'm trying not to say one particular word, because I'm trying to erase that from everyone's memory. So I'm trying to make sure that I don't say that word. But what is that we can do other than create safe spaces for people?
I think just telling people it's okay to talk about it. So in my realm of nature, based off my profession, that I do allow open dialogue. I am also raising that with my son. Like, it's okay to speak about how you feel. Telling him it's okay that you may be feeling this way, you may be going through this, but let's talk about it. Let's talk it out. Let's talk about how you may feel. Let's talk about how you got to this point, and let's talk about the outcome of it and necessarily the results. And so allowing a person to be like, I feel this way, but yet I don't know why I feel this way. And just so I often tell people, do you want me to be a person that you vent to? So when it comes to vent, do you want me to give you my advice, or do you want me to simply just listen? And so with that being said, that's how I operate. And so I often tell people, like, it's okay to talk about how you feel, because often raised in the African American culture, we weren't taught to be able to just come speak about how we feel. And so allowing that into the new generation, that they are creating that sense of realm where, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going through, or I'll tell you how I feel, and we operate based off there.
Oh, right there behind you.
I'll say, I think now, like at home, some people don't have a place, with family and home life to be able to be open and transparent in that type of situation, in these situations when it comes to mental health. But what I am hopeful for and what I see with what you're doing and what we have in the community now, there are other outlets. There are other, like what he was saying about people coming to different people they trust, and they are able to talk and discuss these things. But that's why I'm glad that you're having these discussions and these outlets for people to be able to be free to do so. It's just a matter of coming, the information is out here now. You're putting it out here pretty strong, and I really love that you're doing that. I love you. You're my brother. I love that. But at the same time, we have to sometimes fight for ourselves. As like what you're saying, we have to go to stuff. We have to put the work in to sometime to be able to better ourselves to get the help that we need.
Wow, thank you. Let me say this: is mental health can be painful. It can be uncomfortable. It puts you in a state of vulnerability because you have to trust that either the people that are around you or the people that you call family or friends, the support, you have to trust that they have your best interests at heart, even in listening, because people can listen in a way that you will never open your mouth again. And so I don't want to ever put out a false sense of security and say that if you come forward or if you say this or if you do this or you start to admit it or you feel this way, just talk about it, because you can't do that with everyone. You can't be vulnerable with everyone. So it's up to you though to want to be healthy more than anything. And if you want to be healthy, you will be uncomfortable. It will be painful because you have to relive it and you have to go through it over and over again. But I promise you, if you embrace it, you will get on the other side of it. But you have to embrace it because everybody won't see it like you see it. Everybody won't feel it as deep as you feel it. And so you have to be okay with that, because ultimately, this is the selfish piece again. You want to be healthy, regardless of what anyone else says. And so you want to always have the opportunity to bring success to yourself and thrive in a society that says you always should survive. And so we want to make sure that we're thriving and not surviving. Okay. Any other comments pertaining to that or anything? So let's talk about parenting. Let's talk about parenting because that's come up too. My good brother here says that some of the things that he's trying to he wants to implement with his son. Well, his son's 8 months old, so he has a long way to do that, right? But when it comes to our kids, being able to have conversation with our kids about the significance of mental stress on us, being able to be a parent that we thought we should be or that we always wanted to be growing up. At the end of the day, you're dealt with a certain hand. Whatever that hand is, you just have to play it. But at the same time, there's opportunities for you to make changes as we grow, as we learn, as we develop, that some things are we're not in the same era, so I always tell people, don't blame parents to some degree for some of their reactions or their interactions because they didn't know. So you have to kind of find grace for them, because at that time they may have been fighting out in the streets of Watts, may have been dealing with the dogs getting, it could be a lot of stuff that was going on during that time where they couldn't be that intact emotional parent that you needed. So it's really, really a thin line right there. So I always want to be conscious of that. But then there's also some things that were done that shouldn't have been done, and it's unexplainable, that causes some of the trauma in our kids. But if there are any type of things that we can do to control or to minimize the effects that we have on our kids by way of the mental piece, is that we have to make sure that we're always aware of what we're dealing with and what we have dealt with. And so anything about parenting, I know you were saying about your son, I always, now, so my son is real quiet. My son is quiet. He only gets hyped when we talk about movies and sports and stuff. But like a man-to-man conversation, he'll shut down. But it's not. But I still do it though. We still have those conversations, and he always tells me he hears me, and so I believe that. And so that's the thing about it, is that you can't force your parenting on them to the point where they do the opposite. I guess I would say we have our own minds as kids. I'm not saying that, but there are times when kids do listen, and we don't give them the benefit of the doubt that they are listening and that they are seeing too. And so we have to make sure that we're not contradictory either. So we have to be real careful with that. So at the end of the day, what do you guys think about parenting, mental health, all that kind of stuff? What is that?
So I have a son, one son, and he's 30 years old. My son lives, not in, he's in another city, another state. But what I find challenging is he's a man now, so, but he's always been naturally really quiet and reserved too. But I'm noticing that, when you begin to go from, you're no longer parenting, you're kind of just, you're helping them and kind of giving them advice, advising them in areas of their life if they listen to you, and just kind of throwing things out there to help them along the way now, because it no longer goes into you being telling them what to do. Now you're giving them advice, and it took me a long time to understand that part. But what I've learned about my son is that he is still naturally that quiet, reserved young man. And it's kind of like what you're saying with your son. What I notice now is that when I say some things, I say, "Do you hear me?" He said, "Yeah, I hear you." It's the same thing. So I've learned to have to let it go at that, that he does hear me. He might not always say anything, but I know that he's still kind of listening to me at times.
There is a transition. That's funny. There is a transition in parenting. And as a parent, we have to understand what stage we're in during that parenting stage. Because, I'm going to be honest with you. I still struggle with the fact that my girls are no longer in the house, because I can't protect them. And I'm praying that they make the right decisions. And when they don't, I feel a way. I don't say anything because I can't interfere, because now I have to allow them to be adults. And so you have to make sure that you understand what stage of parenting you're in order to be able to have that relationship where you can actually converse with your child, have positive dialogue with your child, where it's not always like, "Oh, I'm the mama," or "I'm the daddy," having a conversation with them to where you can say, "Okay, these are the positive things that I need. These are the things that I see you doing. These are the things that," and let them receive it in a way and say, "Okay, I know dad loves me. I know mom loves me." But at the same time, that was tough. That was a tough talk, right? But sometimes you need those tough talks. The one thing that I always tell the girls is make sure that you respect the man. If you can't respect him, you need to get out of there. And I say that because every man and every woman deserves to be respected. And if you can't respect him and if she can't respect you, then y'all need to, go your separate ways. So if you find yourself in a situation like that, then you have to make a decision. And I can't make that decision because if I make that decision, then you go back to him next week, then what does this look like for me as dad? And so I have to trust that I've given you enough to where you can make those decisions on your own. And so the parenting level is different now. And so I have these conversations, and every conversation is different with all of them. And she right here, right now, and our conversation is different than the other two girls, and so on and so on. And so even with him, the conversations are different based on where I'm at in that parenting stage with that individual kid or a young adult now. So it's me being more conscious of where I'm at in my parenting, also where they are at in their adulthood. So that makes sense.
Yes, because again, he's my only one too,
Mm.
and so who he is who he is, and he's a man, and I'm not saying that to say that all men do the same, but he's like I said, he's very quiet and reserved. So our conversations are not very long.
Yeah.
Sometimes he'll feel an urge to talk a little bit more.
Yeah.
And he'll laugh, and I'll take advantage of those times.
Yeah.
And try to get some things out of him. But I do, like you're saying, I do notice though, it's a season, you got to know what season you in as a parent. They're always going to be our kids, our children, but they're not children. You have to still treat them as adults.
Yeah.
And that's what I am continuously learning. And I now know that because now some of the conversations that I have with him now, there's no way I could have had with him when he was a young boy.
Absolutely.
Because now he's a man, so I can be a little more transparent with him about the things and the choices that he's choosing to go and the ways that he's choosing to go, and not tell him what to do, but give him advice on how to do it.
Yeah. I'm going to say this before anybody else speaks, is that you have to understand the developmental stages of an individual. We go through this stage of black and white. It is what it is, right? I see this and this is what it looks like. But until we get to a point where we see things abstractly, meaning we see color now. We don't see just black and white. We don't see a gray area. We actually see color. Now it's our imagination, the creativity. So now at that point, that youth is starting to develop this insight that, these are possibilities. This is not just this. It's just not what I see here. It could be something that's behind that. It's a silhouette. I mean, so the abstract thinking shows you where they are developmentally, where you can have certain type of conversations with them. And so you have to nurture that in each stage of your child and your relationship. So now, but anybody else about parenting?
I think for me, parenting and mental health. So like when I first was introduced to parenting, it was a way of me thinking like, dang, I don't ever want to have kids. I don't want to go through this. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Just no. I was doing fine. But now that I have a son, after experiencing parenting another way, I truly believe that if I did not experience it, a point of view of parenting, someone parenting me from another point of view, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I'm doing now with my own child. Because when we talked about like toxic foundations, that was my toxic foundation. And so that made me completely like, oh no. But when you tell yourself like, no, you don't have to do that. And you don't even know, like, I didn't even know I could tell myself like, no, that's not how it go, because I didn't know. So now that I know, it's like, okay, this is the small stage. I don't have to worry about trying to tell him to do all this stuff when he get older. Just simple stuff. Thank you, please, excuse me, play with your toys, don't carry his curiosity. Like letting him be a child, not even identifying like, oh, let him be a boy, but a child.
Yeah.
Before trying to teach him something about gender and this, they get they're like a sponge. So they see everything, they want to do everything, and they only do what you teach them. So it was scary at first, but with the mental health, you have to make sure you're sane to keep them sane, because if you don't, I'm not going to say that you will fail, but you have to be like strong enough to tell yourself that, okay, I don't have to do it how my mom taught me. I've had other examples. I've seen other things. I know what it looks like. I know what's a boundary. So it's just it's hard, but it doesn't have to be hard. When you go through the transition, it becomes much easier of identifying things that you have to identify to help yourself to raise a child.
I will say this, is it is extremely important that you understand how you were parented, because it will so easily be how you parent. And I would tell anyone, is your parents give you the foundation of how you should act, how you should behave. They give you all those things. And if the foundation is not given properly, then guess what? It goes into your relationships. And when it goes into your relationships, it causes problems. So my advice is to look at various relationships. But let's be honest. Most of us in our community don't see a lot of positive relationships. We may see one, and some of us may not even see that. And so now we're just learning on the fly. And that's kind of hard. That's challenging. But I will say this too, is that if you come from a solid foundation and the painting has already been painted, that's okay. Just hang it on the wall and get you a blank one. And you repaint yours. You paint your picture, what it looks like, what you want it to look like. But you still don't throw away mama's and daddy's picture. That's your foundation. You put that right beside. It's just like you put your husband and wife picture. You put your upbringing picture over here, and now you create your own. Especially when it comes to raising your kids, because we will have a hard time raising kids like we were raised, because the time is different. You cannot do that nowadays. As much as you want to take them back to the 60s and the 70s and do this and do that, you cannot do that with today's kids. So we must know the difference, because if we don't, somebody else will teach them. And then we're going to really look at ourselves like, were we parenting right? Were we doing the things that we were supposed to? So be careful. And if you're parenting, paint your own picture. Moms and dad is not bad, but if you had that bad experience, throw it in the trash and start over. I got 4 minutes, so let me do this. Anybody has any parting words, any last thing to say before we end this? I love doing these type of things because we can just talk forever, but I do have to end this, and we can definitely talk later. But if anybody else has any last minute saying anything that they would like to say, anything that the questions, anything, last few minutes, anybody?
I think that to get the word out more, well, the education of mental health out more, you got to keep doing what you're doing, no matter what. Because eventually, like I said, if you wait till 911, they're going to be coming to you. They're going to be coming to you. So the neighborhood therapist needs to keep going, no matter what.
We will.
He said we will.
Yeah. Anybody else? Got any last parting words before we get up out of here?
Jump.
Okay.
I feel like the nature of these events are within a community deemed as necessary because people don't often talk about these things. People don't address these things. People don't speak on as you mentioned earlier, the traumas that they may go through. And so this allows a safe space for them to be able to publicly speak about what they may be experiencing. And so this allows a sense of growth. And within that growth, it creates you to be a monitor. Yo. Oh, there we go. It moderates you to be a better human being. And so it allows you to take different perspectives in. And so I often tell people is you're not going to necessarily retain 100% of what I'm saying, but just take that 1% out. And so if you take that 1%, you're getting better each and every day. And so everybody is different. And so what they hear and what they receive based off a sense of communication is different. So that allows them in a sense of growth. And so as long as you're able to just take something or a small part of what has been done or what has been said or what you've heard, you're able to just incorporate it based off how your day-to-day operations or your just simply human structure is being held.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I would say.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I love bro.
Anybody else? So, as I end this, first of all, thank you guys for coming. I truly appreciate y'all's support. Man, y'all have been with me rocking, so I appreciate that. I will say this though, is when it comes to what you love to do, how it impacts people, just to be able to give some sense of relief of what they're dealing with. These type of events allow us all to come together to hear different perspectives on what is not always available to us, which is mental health. And so this is an opportunity for us and for me not to just see one person in my office, but to see multiple people at one time. And also to be able to give as much advice as possible on direction. And then it also allows me not to even, it's never about my education. It's always about the people. It's always about relating to people, always about giving them a sense of direction, things that they can do better, that things that they can work on. And so I always want you guys to always look at it as I'm here to help. And that's my only premise behind what I do, is to help people. At some point, as my sister always say, it won't be like this, and it's going to cost. And so, but now we're building something here, and we're building because there's a need to educate people on mental health. There's a need to talk about it freely, and there's a need for you to see people in different light, because everybody's not perfect. And when you see that person comes in fully dressed from head to toe, looks good, looks nice, smells good, that doesn't mean anything. So we want to make sure that we're being aware of what's going on in our community, aware of what's going on in our homes, and ultimately aware of what's going on in us. And as I always say, we all have the ability to focus, work on, and get through the things that we can get through only if we focus on what we can change. If we start to work on ourselves and not focus on anyone else, we'll be a better people. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for showing up. I appreciate you. Love you.
He would like to get everyone on stage to
Pictures, 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 pictures.
Them two, yeah, them two first. And if you want to tell me,
Come on, let's get everybody.
if you want to tell me,
Kevin, get in the middle. Get in the middle. Okay. Yeah, you bring them over here. Come on. Yeah, we gotta get them in there. Hey, good luck, man. Come on. Come on. We're good? Everybody step this way, one step, the other one, the same way. Right there? We're good?